National student loan debts cost Americans over $1 trillion every year. The National Center of Education Statistics, or the NCES, shows that even with inflation adjustment, the cost of college education has doubled in 30 years. College is very important to many people. They go there to get degrees so they can get jobs in fields that they're interested in, and many people go on to meet lifelong friends or even future spouses. People spend a lot of time in colleges and money, and they want to get the best jobs and experience that they can for their money. So, not only has tuition risen, but other fees and costs are leaving many graduates in very heavy debt. We all know that in life stuff gets more expensive. For instance, apples may have cost only a couple cents 100 years ago, now are nearing $1 per apple or even more. But college has outpaced everything else. College tuition itself is actually rather expensive. We are going to be talking about the NIAC and Iowa State prices. NIAC, otherwise known as the North Iowa Area Community College, will be our example community college, where Iowa State will be our example private university. On their websites, NIAC says that it will cost about $4,000 a year in tuition to go to their school, while Iowa State says it will cost an average of $8,000 a year, which is roughly double. And this means that after a 4-year degree at Iowa State, it'll cost someone $32,000 in tuition to go there. That isn't cheap money, and can leave some people unprepared in a lot of debt. And the NCES states that inflation has a big effect on prices, and they found stats on inflation costs versus the actual cost of tuition going all the way back to 1985. In 1985, it cost $4,500 on average to get a degree at a college. Or if we were to adjust for inflation using price indexes, that would be $10,000 of 2015 dollars. In 2015, it cost $21,728 on average. That is roughly double of what it would have cost in 1985, including inflation. That means that for us to be paying for college and at an equal rate as what they did in 1985, we would be spending only $10,000 compared to that $21,000 that we are spending now. This large jump in education means that it is growing and getting much more expensive than it should. It's outpacing people's jobs and their salaries, so it's getting harder and harder for people to save for college. And parents are, unless they have millions, are going to be hard-pressed to find ways to save. Tuition, though, isn't the only cost of a class. Books, beds, breakfast are all provided by colleges. So, if we look at room and board, both NIAC and Iowa State have approximately $8,000 a year costs for a dorm and meal plans. NIAC offers some $6,000 ones, but those are not as good rooms and you have more roommates. That comes out to about $1,000 a month for living expenses and food. And, well, if you're paying $1,000 a month to live, you can find a lot cheaper places in both of the areas around there. That might be a really good deal if you're going to New York City or Los Angeles, but in an area like Mason City or even Ames, that is a very expensive plan. There are many apartments available for sale with rent and utilities coming out to about $500 in the Mason City area, and food can cost for a single college student probably $50 a week. That brings the total per month costs to about $700 to have a house and have food, which is $300 less than if they got a dorm. And dorms are very prided. They pride themselves on being an open family where the doors are always open, but to some people that means that they're going to be living with a stranger in the same room where they will have little to no privacy. They'll be living in one small room with multiple people, and they don't want to have to look over their shoulder when they are changing to make sure no one's around. Yet they can spend less money to get that privacy that they might want. Another thing that comes with these is meal plans. Both of them have meal plans built into these $8,000 rents. NIAC did not state exactly how much their meal plan costs in their website, but ISU says that they have about $4,000 meal plans that are included in the living expenses. This comes out to about $250 a week during the school year, which is quite a bit of money. As I said earlier, a single college student could probably survive on $50 a week, but $250 a week, to provide a broad example, can easily feed a family of 4 with good meal. And by good meals, I'm talking they're eating meat 3 to 5 nights a week. This is outrageously expensive for college students. Books are another thing. All colleges' tuition will provide you with that class, but many classes also require that you have books or computers or other necessary materials. Some classes even require several books. Textbooks for colleges aren't cheap. They can cost anywhere from $50 to $300, and unless you buy them used, they will run you quite a bit. Some classes have to get new textbooks every year depending on the subject. Certain classes can go for over 20 years without getting new textbooks, so you can get used textbooks a lot easier, but some have to be replaced every few years. Meaning that if you get unlucky and start a class where this is the first year with that textbook, you will have no chances of finding a cheaper used one. One interesting thing to note, though, in the textbook industry is the use of international textbooks. Most textbooks are created in the United States and by American companies, and they charge, as I said, the $50 to $300, but they also make international versions for overseas students. You can buy these in Europe or Asia or even Canada, and they surprisingly are a lot cheaper. These textbooks are identical in content, in examples, pictures, or even questions and work problems, but they have 2 key differences. The first one is many of them come with a little sticker on the front that says "not for legal sale in the United States." And the other one is that they cost about half the price. This is somewhat suspicious that a company in the United States is selling the exact same product for 2 completely different prices, and the cheaper one isn't able to be sold in the United States. This is rather suspicious for the land of the free. Typical economics would state that the American textbooks would be the cheaper ones because the costs of exporting the textbooks out of the country aren't applied to those ones, and they're applied to the international textbooks. This means that textbook industries, unless they have fines or legal restrictions that they have to go through, are making a killer profit on college student textbooks. But as we know, these costs are benefit, right? College students are working to get exclusive access to certain jobs, and employers clamor for other college graduates, don't they? Well, college education is becoming mandatory. You see, it is expected in 2020 that 64% of all jobs will require post-high school education. Middle management jobs, like working as a floor manager in a factory, are starting to require schooling. These used to be jobs that an average factory worker who started after high school would be able to slowly work themselves up to in a position and then support their family with. Now they aren't even able to apply for these positions unless they get college education. Oftentimes their floor experience would give them more knowledge on this subject and how to actually manage it than any classroom ever would, which is rather unfortunate. So with college becoming required, you would think that it might get cheaper because more people are coming in and they're trying to lower the cost for everyone. Well, on average, the students leave with large amounts of debt. In 1994, the average college graduate had a debt of around $10,000. In 2016, they had an average debt of $35,000, according to Times. The Times stated that a quarter of all graduates who graduated with debt had excessive debt. Now, what they meant by excessive debt was they had this calculation to determine what that meant, and they took the average income that they would receive after graduating and compared it with the average income they would receive if they never went to college, and found the difference. And if half of that difference could not pay off their college in 10 years, they graduated with excessive debt. Having excessive debt, they then went on to find that it has an effect where it will delay large life events such as marriage or home ownership or even starting families and pregnancy. So we have schooling that's becoming mandatory that is reaching outrageous prices and is really hurting people. This isn't the first time this has happened in history. When regular schooling was starting to become mandatory for the workforce, the government established public schools. What I mean by this was, reading and writing used to be very exclusive skills, but in the present day, and even 100 years ago, they were almost required to hold a job. In those situations, for a parent to have their child schooled, they used to have to spend as much as we now spend on college, and we're looking at this where a required class, they'd have to save a significant amount just to put their kids into a position where they could get a job. If we look at the historical trends, it seems like we're in a new stepping stone of education. Will college degrees seem like high school degrees do now, where we're making movements that governments will start implementing and stronger enforcing their public schools so they're cheaper and around the price of education would be for elementary or middle school? In conclusion, college education is becoming a requirement for the middle class, and their costs are crippling graduates' finances. As fellow college students, the size of our college debt is going to have a huge impact on many of our life choices. And in the words of former North Carolina Governor Bob Scott, no one should be denied the opportunity to get an education and increase their earning potential based solely on their inability to pay for a college education.